Hello everyone. In today's class, we will be learning about Newton's universal law of gravitation and regarding gravitational fields in detail. Already in the earlier classes, we came to know what are the Kepler's laws and how Newton has found out a relation between the Kepler's laws and universal law of gravitation. And we have also seen how the gravitational force is affected by the distance or by the masses. We have already seen in the earlier classes. In today's class, we will be learning about in detail about the universal law of gravitation, which was given by Newton, and also what are the gravitational fields and how they are going to affect the gravity when any body is moving or any body is orbiting towards a celestial body. Myself, S. Vidyarani, working as Assistant Professor of Physics at AVS Government Degree College, Autonomous, Mehboob. Let's start our session. So, when we get into our mind about Isaac Newton, we remind of an apple, because he normally, as a story, we in childhood days we came to know that Isaac Newton was sitting under a tree, and when an apple fell on his head, then he thought why this apple is falling down. So then he came to know about the gravity or gravitational force of the earth or of any object. So, but this is a mere story, but normally to remind of that I have shown this in the figure. Let us see about the gravity, which is discovered by Newton. So according to Newton's law of gravitation, every particle of matter attracts every other particle with a force which is directly proportional to the product of the masses and inversely proportional to the square of the distance between them. So this is the Newton's law of gravitation, as we have learnt earlier also, that according to Newton's law of gravitation, the force exerted by any object on any other object or mutual forces between both the objects is directly proportional to product of the masses. That is, let us say the mass of the first object is small m and the mass of the second object is capital M, say, and they are separated by a distance of r. So this force is directly proportional to product of the masses, that is m and m, and also inversely proportional to the square of the distance. So inversely proportional to the square of the distance is r here, so square of the distance is r square, so f is inversely proportional to r square. So when we sum up both the equations, that is f is directly proportional to product of masses and f is inversely proportional to the square of the distance, we get f is proportional to m by r square, wherein further the equation changes into f is equal to capital G into m by r square, where G is called as proportionality constant. In this case, we will call it as universal gravitation constant. So, next, in Newton's laws of gravitation, we are showing mass m1 and the another body with a mass of m2, which are both centers are separated by a distance r. The force exerted by the first body on the second body is F21, let us say, and the force exerted by the second body on the first body is F12, let us say. So this both forces are equal and balanced. So F, we can write it as F is equal to capital G m1 m2 by r square, where G is called as universal gravitational constant. And this value of G is equal to 6.67 into 10 power minus 11 newtons meter square per kg square. This G is a constant value throughout the universe, and G does not depend on the medium between them. So this value is constant for anything in the universe, and this G doesn't depend on the medium between them, whatever be the medium, but this G value will not change. So now let us see the differences between capital G and small g. As we all know, capital G is universal gravitation constant, and where small g is acceleration due to gravity. Let us know the differences in between them in detail. G is called as universal gravitational constant, where small g is called as acceleration due to gravity. Be careful while writing notation or symbols because capital G represents universal gravitational constant and small g represents acceleration due to gravity. Don't interchange them because the meaning will change and it is going to be a mess with you. So hence please be careful while writing the notation. And this capital G value is equal to, as of now I told that G is equal to 6.67 into 10 power minus 11 Newton meter square per kg square. And normally approximate value of G, small g is, that is acceleration due to gravity, is 9.8 meters per second square. And mind my words, value of G varies from one place to another on the earth. So this G varies from one place to another. Whereas this capital G remains constant, so that's why it is called as universal gravitational constant. So here if you see, constant throughout the universe. So in any of the planet or any place wherever you go, this capital G is going to be constant. This will not change. Whereas this small g, that is acceleration due to gravity, changes every place on a planet. That means, example, on the moon, it is the value of G is 1/6 of that on the Earth's surface. Or if you move to Jupiter or Saturn, again G value is going to change. So G value changes from place to place and planet to planet in the universe. Now we will see the relation between capital G, that is universal gravitation constant, and small g, that is acceleration due to gravity. First let us take an example. Let capital M is equal to mass of the earth. Small m is equal to mass of an object on the surface of the earth, let us say. G is equal to acceleration due to gravity on the earth's surface, and R is equal to radius of the earth. So relation between G and G we have to show. Let us suppose capital M is the mass of the earth, small m is the mass of the body which is on the surface of the earth, and this R is the radius or the distance at which the body is placed from the earth's center. So weight of the object is the gravitational force acting on it. So we know that weight of the object is nothing but the gravitational force acting on it. So we have to find out the weight of the object. How will you find out? Weight of the object is equal to gravitational force. So weight of the object of this small body is, mass is, we know that W is equal to mg, that is mass into acceleration due to gravity. Here mass of the object is given as small m, hence small m into acceleration due to gravity is g. So weight of the object is equal to mg, that is equal to gravitational force. Gravitational force according to the Newton's universal law of gravitation, a gravitational force F is equal to G into capital M into small m by R square. R is the radius or the distance between these two, earth and the object. So if you write these and simplify the equations, so small m is going to be cancelled on either sides. So remaining G value we will get it as small g is equal to G into m by R square, where G is the universal gravitation constant, capital M is the mass of the earth, R is the distance between the earth and the object which is on the earth's surface. So acceleration due to gravity is equal to product of G and M and divided by R square. So relation between G and G. This is the second instance we are going to say. If you might have observed here, we have taken as gravitational force is nothing but product of the masses and the inverse of the distance. Distance is here R, because it's on the surface of the earth. So now the distance will be equal to the radius from the center of the earth. So we have taken it as simple R. But whereas in the next slide, if you observe, this is at a height of, now the object is at a height from the surface of the earth. That means surface of the distance from the center of the earth to the surface of the earth is capital R, but now the object is placed at a height of h from the surface of the earth. That means the distance between the surface of the earth to the object is h. That means total distance are that between the mass, center of the mass, center of the earth and the object is capital R from here to here, and from here to here it is h. I will show you. So this distance is capital R from the earlier slide. So now this is the surface of the earth. From the surface of the earth, the object is placed at a height of h. That means the total distance from the center of the earth to the object will be capital R plus h. Now in place of the R in the formula, we have to substitute the distance as R plus h. That means at height h from the surface of the earth surface, acceleration due to gravity will become g at h. At a height h, weight of the object is mgh is equal to gravitational force will be gmm by, and now the distance is r plus h whole square. So that we have substituted. On either side m gets cancelled. So the value of g at a height h from the earth surface will be gm by r plus h whole square. So dividing equation 2 by 1, that is, so we have got one equation here at a height h and the first equation normally on the earth surface. So both equations, if we divide equation 2 by 1, we get gh is equal to g into r by r plus h whole square. That is, that is acceleration due to gravity is independent of the mass of the object. So if you observe here, this is m, this is small m, and this is the height on which the object is placed from the surface. So dividing equation 2 by 1 we get, so if we write here gh by g is equal to g m by r plus h whole square by g m by r square. So gm gets cancelled. So r square will become numerator. So hence gh by g by g is equal to r square by r plus h whole square. This in turn we can take out square common and we will get this equation. So that means g is acceleration due to gravity is independent of the mass of the object. So let us take an example and solve a problem. How hard to do two planets pull on each other if their masses are 1.23 into 10 power 26 kg and 5.21 into 10 power 22 kg, and they are apart of 230 million kilometers. That means these are the masses of both the planets M1 and M2. And this is the distance between those two planets, that is r. So we know that gravitational force Fg is equal to g into m1 into m2 by r square. Here m1 we have substituted g value, we know that 6.67 into 10 power minus 11 Newton meter square per kg square, and m1 is equal to 1.23 into 10 power 26 and m2 is 5.21 into 10 power 22. All the values we have substituted, divided by r square. R is 230 million kilometers. So million converted into 230 into 10 cube, because we have to convert kilometers into meters. So 10 cube. Million means 10 power 6. So hence 230 into 10 cube into 10 power 6 into meter square. So we have changed all the units of all them into one SI unit. So when we solve this and simplify this equation, we are going to get the gravitational force value as 8.08 into 10 power 15 newtons. Units of force are newtons. So 8.08 into 10 power 15 newtons. That means this much amount of force is exerted by each planet on the other. I have told that according to Newton's third law, the same amount of force is exerted on mutually on each other by two objects. So that's why we call them as balanced forces. So this is the amount of force each planet is going to exert on the other. So if you see, we have taken the denominator as 10 cube because to convert the kilometers into meters, and a factor of 10 power 6 to account for the million. So that means if we calculate this amount of force is exerted on each of the planet by the other planet. Now we will move on to inverse square law. Inverse square law is also same universal gravitation of constant. From that formula we will get. So the law of gravitation is called as inverse square law because the magnitude of the force is inversely proportional to the square of the separation or square of the distance. That means this F is inversely proportional to the square of the separation or the distance. So this is called as inverse square law. That means if the masses are moved twice as far apart, the force of gravity between is cut by a factor of 4. That means if the distance is increased by twice by each 2 times, then 2 times means if we square it, it will become 4. That means the force of gravity between them is cut by a factor of 1 by 4. Triple the separation, triple the separation means now 3r, it will become 3r whole square means 9 square. So 1 by 9th. Now force will be 1 by 9th of the lesser of the earlier situation. Triple the separation and the force is 9 times weaker. So now let us take a question. What if each mass and separation were all quadrupled? Each mass and separation, that means each mass is made 4 m1 and the second mass also quadrupled, that is 4 times the mass of the second one. And now the distance is also, separation is also quadrupled, that means 4 times the distance. So now if you see 4 fours is 16, so 16 g m1 m2, and again this will also become 16 r square. That means 16 gets cancelled, so now the answer will be F is equal to g m1 m2 by r square. That means no change in the force. So what if each mass and the separation are quadrupled? According to the equation, we have solved it and we have seen that there is no change in the equation if both the masses as well as the separation gets quadrupled. Hence the answer will be no change in the force. So let us see the summary of Kepler's 3 laws of planetary motion. Planets move around the sun in elliptical paths with the sun at one focus of the ellipse. Next, second point is while orbiting, a planet sweeps out equal areas in equal times. And the third law, if you see, the square of a planet's period or the revolution time, say, or time period, is proportional to the cube of its mean distance from the sun. That is, cube of its mean distance is nothing but semi-major axis, cube of semi-major axis. That is, t square is directly proportional to r cube. These laws apply to any satellite orbiting a much larger body. So these laws can be applied to any body which is orbiting around a larger body. So Kepler's first law, planets move around the sun in elliptical paths with the sun at one focus of the ellipse. So let us say these are the two focus F1 and F2. Sun is at the focus F1 and the planet is orbiting around the sun. So an ellipse has two foci F1 and F2. For any point P on the ellipse, F1P plus F2P is constant. The orbits of the planets are nearly circular. F1 and F2 are close together but not perfect circles. A circle is an ellipse with both foci at the same point, that means at the center. Comets have very eccentric orbits, that means highly elliptical. When compared to planets, comets have very eccentric orbits, highly elliptical. Kepler's second law, while orbiting a planet sweeps out equal areas in equal times. So if you see here the blue shade, this part same is this area is covers same area as of this area. So these both areas are same but in a equal interval of time. That means the blue shaded sector, this brown shaded sector has the same area as the red shaded sector. Thus a planet moves from C to D in the same amount of time as it moves from A to B. So A to B, if we take the time period, this time period is same and this time period is same. And if we count for the same time period, the areas covered by the planet will be the same. This means a planet moves faster when it is closer to the sun. That's why it could be able to cover much distance. Whereas when it is away from the sun, the planet covers a little distance because due to the weaker gravitational force. So for planets this effect is small, but for comets it is quite noticeable. Since a comet's orbit it has much greater eccentricity. So we can see this clearly for a comet because they are more elliptical when compared to planets. So we can see that when the comet is near to the sun, it moves very fastly, but whereas it moves away from the sun, it moves very slowly. Kepler's third law, the square of a planet's period is proportional to the cube of its mean distance from the sun, that is t square is directly proportional to r cube. Let us assume that a planet's orbit is circular, that is which is not exactly correct, but we are approximating that in most cases it is circular. Then the mean distance from the sun is constant, that is the radius. The radius is same from the sun all over the orbit. F is the force of gravity on the planet. F is also the centripetal force which is holding the planet to move in its orbit. If the orbit is circular, the planet's speed is constant, that is only when elliptical the speed is changing, but whereas if the orbit is circular, the planet is moving with a constant speed. Hence V can be calculated as 2 pi r by t because 2 pi r is the circumference. We know that V is equal to distance, velocity is equal to speed is equal to distance by time. Distance is here the circumference of the circle, that is 2 pi r, where r is the radius, by t is the time taken, time period. So velocity will be V is equal to 2 pi r by t. Therefore, from this equation we can count that for gmm by r square, which is force of gravitation, is equal to velocity, that is mv square by r, mv square by r. That means this can be written as m into 2 pi r, whereas we got v as 2 pi r by t whole square by r. So then on both sides if we cancel m, on both sides let us cancel m. So this and this gets cancelled. So then we will get it as, or let us take this, not this. So let us cancel these two. So we get it as gm by r square is equal to, now square this, 4 pi square r square by t square by r, 1 r gets cancelled. So remaining will be 4 pi square r by t square. When we rearrange this equation, we get the time period t square is equal to 4 pi square by gm into r cube, where 4 is a constant, pi is also a constant, g and m both are constant. So the relation between t square and r cube can be said as, since g, m and pi are constant, t square is directly proportional to r cube. That means the time period or the time taken for the planet to orbit around a heavier body is nothing but relation is t square is directly proportional to r cube. Next we will see about the gravitational fields. What are uniform gravitational fields? We live in what is essentially a uniform gravitational field. This means that the force of gravity near the surface of the earth is pretty much constant in magnitude and direction. The green lines, if you observe here, are gravitational field lines. They show the direction of the gravitational force on any object in the region is straightly down. Let us say this is the Earth's surface. So straightly down. That means in a uniform field the lines are parallel to one another. Gravitational field lines are parallel to one another and they are evenly spaced in a uniform gravitational field. So near Earth's surface the magnitude of the gravitational field is 9.8 Newton per kg. That is, for every kilogram of mass, an object experiences 9.8 Newtons of force. Since a Newton is a kilogram into meter per second square, that is 1 Newton per kg is equal to 1 meters per second square. So the gravitational field strength is just the acceleration due to gravity g. This 9.8 we got from the acceleration due to gravity. So evenly spaced and all are towards one direction shows that it's a uniform gravitational field. So let us say 10 kg mass is near the surface of the earth. Since the field strength is 9.8 Newton per kg, each of the 10 kilograms feels a 9.8 Newton force, that is for a total of 98 Newtons, because 10 into 9.8 Newtons is 98 Newtons. So we can calculate the force of gravity by multiplying mass and field strength. This is same as calculating its weight, that is W is equal to mass into gravity. So mass is 10 and acceleration due to gravity is 9.8. Hence the weight will be 98 Newtons. That is force. Now, non-uniform gravitational fields. As we are told that near Earth's surface the gravitational field is approximately uniform. Next, if we move away from the surface, it looks more like sea urchin. The field lines are radial rather than parallel. So in the earlier case we have seen that earlier. But far from the surface it looks like the lines are radial rather than parallel and point towards the center of the earth. All the gravitational field lines are pointing towards the center of the earth. So when we move away from the earth's surface, so they are becoming farther from each other. Get farther apart from the surface, meaning the field is weaker there. So when we move from this place to this place, they are moving away from each other. That shows that the gravitational field is weaker as we move away from the surface. Get closer to the surface. When we move towards the surface, what happens? The field is becoming stronger. So gravitational field becomes stronger when we move closer towards the surface. Gravitational field is weaker when we move away from the surface. Next, universal gravitation. Newtonian gravitation says free fall acceleration and the gravitational force, gravitational potential energy, escape speed, as well as Kepler's first law, second law and third law. So Newton's law of universal gravitation is the apple was attracted to the earth. All objects in the universe were attracted to each other in the same way the apple was attracted to the earth. From this he got the equation F is equal to G into m1 m2 by r square. So the sun is exerting the gravity on the planet, hence the planet is attracted towards the sun and it is able to move in an orbit rather than fall into the sun. So if you see this, Newton's law of universal gravitation. Every particle in the universe attracts every other particle with a force that is directly proportional to the product of the masses and inversely proportional to the square of the distance between them. Nothing more to explain. Now again inverse square law. Inverse square law, if you observe, There is a star here, planet A and planet B. Let us say the distance between the star and the planet is 1 astronomical unit. That means the distance between the star and the second planet B is 2 astronomical unit. So now this is the gravity. If you observe, so let us say gravitational pull of this sun is attracting the earth towards it. So motion of planet is in a circular or elliptical orbit. So if you see that A is twice as near to the sun as B, A receives 4 times more light than B. Hence, if you observe, see, this is the light is falling more on planet A rather than B. Rather than B is little bit far away from than A. So hence the light is little bit dark here. So A and B are having the same mass. The sun's pull on A is 4 times stronger than B because A is very much near to the sun, and A receives more light, 4 times more light than B because of the inverse square law. Universal gravitation, again we will be seeing G is the constant of universal gravitation. G is equal to 6.673 into 10 power 11 Newton minus 11 Newton meter square kg square. So this is an example of inverse square law. Determined experimentally by Henry Cavendish in 1798. Using this experiment, he has proved the value of G to be constant. F is equal to G m1 m2 by r square. So to explain more about universal gravitation, the force that mass 1 exerts on the mass 2 is equal and opposite to the force mass 2 exerts on mass 1. So these forces form a Newton's third law, action, reaction and balanced forces. The gravitational force exerted by a uniform sphere on a particle outside the sphere is the same as the force exerted if the entire mass of the sphere was concentrated on its center. Now let us see about free fall acceleration. Have you heard this? Astronauts are weightless in space, therefore there is no gravity in space. It is true that if an astronaut on the International Space Station tries to step on a scale, she will weigh nothing. It may seem reasonable to think that if weight is equal to mg, we know that W is equal to mg. Since weight is equal to 0, then G is equal to 0? No, this is not true. If you stand on a scale in an elevator and then the cables are cut, you will also weigh nothing, that is ma is equal to n minus mg. But in free fall, A is equal to G, so the normal force N is equal to 0. This doesn't mean G is equal to 0. Astronauts in orbit are in free fall around the Earth just as you would be in the elevator. They do not fall to Earth only because of their very high tangential speed. So when we are not feeling any weight, that means weight is 0, means that doesn't mean that G is equal to 0. So consider an object of mass m near the surface. So here I am showing an example. F is equal to G m1 m2 by r square. Mass of the object is, let us say, small m. Mass of the earth is capital Me, and the distance between the earth and the object which is on the surface is Re. So now acceleration Ag due to gravity we have to find out. F is equal to, we know that G m me by Re square. According to Newton's second law, F is equal to ma, so ma into acceleration due to gravity. Since we know that mass of the earth is equal to 5.9742 into 10 square per 10 power 23 kg. When we substitute these values and when we simplify the equation, so this m gets cancelled. So we know the value of G, we know the value of m, and let us suppose that earth surface radius is 6378.1 kilometers, and when we substitute all the values we will be able to find out acceleration due to gravity as G into me by r square, where G is equal to, we have found out the value, me we got the value here, Re we got the value here. When we substitute all the three values we get acceleration due to gravity as 9.8 meters per second square. So free fall acceleration and the gravitational force. Again, consider an object of mass m at a height h above the Earth's surface. In the previous case, we have taken on the surface. Now, in this case, we are taking at a distance of h above from the surface of the Earth. That means F is equal to G into M1 M2 by R square. Now the distance will be equal to RE from the center of the Earth to the surface of the Earth. And again it is placed at a height h from the surface, so the distance will be RE plus h. So if you substitute in the same above equation, so here RE plus h square will get, so AG will be G into ME by RE plus h square. So this is how we will be able to find out the acceleration due to gravity for which an object is placed at a height h from the Earth's surface. Now let us move on to gravitational potential energy. U is equal to mgy is valid only near the Earth's surface. Or else we can say in place of y we can take h, that is height of the body from the Earth's surface. For objects high above the Earth's surface, an alternate expression is needed, that is equal to u is equal to minus g me m by r. This minus represents the direction of the object away from the gravitational pull. So zero reference level is infinitely far from the Earth, so potential energy is everywhere negative. Energy conservation, we know that total energy is equal to k plus u, that is equal to half mv square minus g me m by r. Energy of an orbit, let us say, consider a circular orbit of a planet around the sun. What keeps the planet moving in a circle? It is a centripetal force produced by the gravitational force. That is, we know that F is equal to mv square by r, and which can be equal to gmm by r square. That implies that this force is equal to half mv square is equal to gmm by 2r, because E is equal to minus gmm by 2r for circular orbits. So this energy is equal to kinetic energy. Making this substitution in the expression for total energy, so in place of E is equal to half mv square minus gmm by r, in place of kinetic energy we are substituting gmm by 2r. So gmm by 2r minus gmm by r gives rise to gmm by r. Gmm by 2r, sorry. E is equal to minus gmm by 2a for elliptical orbits. Here a represents the semi-major axis, r for circles becomes the radius. Note that the total energy is negative and is half the negative potential energy. If you take the potential energy, that is gmm minus gmm by 2r, so now the total energy has become reduced to half, that is minus gmm by r. For an elliptical orbit, r is replaced by a, which is nothing but semi-major axis. Now let us see what is escape speed. The escape speed is the speed needed for an object to soar off into space and not return onto the planet. That is, total energy is equal to k plus u, which is equal to half mv square minus gmem by r. That should be equal to 0. When we calculate for the Earth, this escape velocity, that is Vs, is about 11.2 kilometers per second. That means V is independent of mass of the object, irrespective of any object which is having higher mass or lower mass. The Earth's surface, to escape from the Earth's surface, it should be projected with a velocity of 11.2 kilometers per second. That is, escape velocity V is equal to root over 2 gme by re. These are the escape velocities for the planets and also for the moon. So for Mercury, any object to be thrown away from Mercury, its escape velocity should be 4.3 kilometers per second. For Venus, it is around 10.3. For Earth, it is 11.2. Moon is very less, 2.3 only. Mars is 5 kilometers per second. Jupiter, 60 kilometers per second. Saturn is 36 kilometers per second, Neptune is 24 kilometers per second, and Pluto is 1 kilometer per second, around 1.1 kilometer per second. These are the escape velocities of each planet as well as the moon. Now we will see the projection of a satellite. Why is it necessary to have at least a two-stage rocket to launch a satellite? We have already discussed about this in rocket motion, multi-stage rocketing. You might remember those things. So a rocket with at least two stages is required to launch a satellite because the first stage is used to carry the satellite up to the desired height. So in the second stage, the rocket is turned horizontally, that is through 90 degrees, and the satellite is fired with the proper horizontal velocity to perform circular motion around the earth. So second stage, what happens while it is moving vertically, while moving after certain stage, after the first stage, rocket is turns towards horizontally, and the satellite is fired with the proper velocity so that it can perform circular motion around the earth. Now let us see what is critical velocity of a satellite. So the horizontal velocity with which a satellite should be projected from a point above the earth's surface so that it orbits in a circular path around the earth is called the orbital velocity or critical velocity of the satellite. Let us say here there is the earth's radius is r from to the surface of the earth. Now a satellite is placed at a height h from the earth's surface. Now the distance has become from the earth center to the object is r plus h. So if v is less than vc, then it will orbit in a circular motion around the earth. That means the velocity required to be projected so that the planet or the body satellite moves in a circular path around the earth is called as critical velocity or the orbital velocity. If v is equal to vc, then this starts revolving around the earth in a circular motion. If v is less than vc, if velocity is less than the critical velocity, then the body falls in towards the earth. And if v is greater than vc, that means if the earth's velocity is greater than critical velocity or the escape velocity, then the body is moved away from the earth. That means it shoots off into the space without returning back to the planet. That is, our velocity should be, if the velocity is above critical velocity and below escape velocity, now this starts revolving around the earth in an elliptical orbit. Now to calculate the mass of the sun, let us take an example. Calculate the mass of the sun, noting that the period of the earth's orbit around the sun is 3.156 into 10 power 7 seconds and its distance from the sun is 1.496 into 10 power 11 meters. So as we all know, t square is equal to 4 pi square by gm into a cube. Whereas we want to find out the mass, mass will be 4 pi square by gt square into a cube. So distance here given as 1.496 and the time period he has given it as 3.156 into 10 power 7. And if we substitute all the constant values and simplify, we get the mass of the sun as 1.99 into 10 power 30 kg. Now let us see what is geosynchronous orbit. From a telecommunications point of view, it's advantageous for satellites to remain at the same location relative to a location on the earth. This can only occur if the satellite's orbital period is the same as the earth's period of rotation, that is 24 hours. So that means if, let us suppose the earth is revolving around, this is the sun. Let us suppose the earth is revolving around the sun. Okay. So now earth's period of rotation, let us say, is 24 hours. So whatever satellite we are making to revolve around the earth. So that should have also the same time period such as 24 hours. Then at what distance of the earth from the center of the earth can this geosynchronous orbit be formed? So T is equal to, we know that, root over 4 pi square by GME A cube. T is equal to, we know that, 24 hours. So now we have to find out that is 86,400 seconds. So we have to find out the A. So at what distance we have to place the satellite. So when we substitute this, we get 41,500 kilometers. So if any satellite is placed at a distance of 41,500 kilometers from the center of the earth, then this satellite will be in geosynchronous orbit. So in this way we can find out the geosynchronous orbits distance. Thank you for your attention. Signing off for today's session. Thank you.